Let's get back on track.
We got a lot of things on the docket. Let's stick to course here.
2022 in review, Sacramento Kings. It was a good year. We heard the first saying of "It's your boy Drapes" in 2022, the highlight of the year so far, or of the year. It's over, so not so far. But on a real note, they got Sabonis. Played, not played. I mean, they've been playing well, and the 2022-3 season, and just had a really good offseason. Got Keegan Murray. John wrote an article about how it was kind of just a Monte McNair highlight reel in 2022. Do you want to go a little into that?
Well, yeah, I think it's important to think back to 12 months ago. Tony, what was your on New Year's Eve 2021 going into 2022? What was your thoughts on a team? What was their record then? It was just like it wasn't good.
No,
they were 15 and 22.
Yeah, and just like no hope really. It's like
Luke Walton just got fired, and I think they weren't just nothing had really shifted.
I think New Year's Eve was. I think Alvin Gentry had that quote where he's just like, "I'm just gonna go home and drink," right? Didn't he have that quote? He's just like, "I'm done with this. Like, I'm gonna go home and I'm gonna go drink." I'm gonna see if I can find that quote somewhere. It might be a second, but everything was just looking like, oh my god, Fox after having a great season the year before just was looking terrible, and you're like, oh god, and he's first year of that contract extension, like. Good, or maybe was it? Yeah, it was his first year last year, or I forget. But everything was just looking down. Everything was looking terrible. Not a lot of hope, and you were looking for a trade. That was like okay, like the Kings need to choose a direction at this trade deadline. You either tank or you have to make a big move, but there was no direction. They were just in the middle. The Kings forever were just like. We're not good enough to get the first pick, but we're not bad enough to we're not bad enough to get the first pick or even like a top 3 pick. But we're not good enough to even make the play-in. They made it even easier for the Kings to make it past regular season basketball, and they still couldn't do it. So it was just like year after year. I mean, it was the second or third year with the play-in. It's like the Kings still can't make it there. And so it's just like you just need to choose direction instead of like it was the worst kind of purgatory because it's like you weren't getting either of those things. So it was all the anticipation was at the trade deadline, and there's a lot of names being thrown around like Ben Simmons, Sabonis, even Jeremy Grant, Julius Randle. There's a bunch of names. So. At the end of the day, obviously, we all know we got Sabonis. And looking back at all those trades, it's like, man, that was probably the best one you could have. I mean, he was the best player out of those guys. None of those other guys I mentioned are even on par with what Sabonis is doing this year. But I don't want to jump ahead too far if you wanted to say more on where the Kings were.
Two things. I mean, yeah, the Alvin Gentry quote, if anybody needs me, I'll be home drinking after they lost to the Mavericks. Was that
New Year's Eve?
That kind of sums up, that encapsulates that moment in time, the essence of it for Kings fans and the Kings organization in a nutshell. And yeah, I mean, it's amazing that anybody would want. There are people that wanted Miles Turner. And I'm glad they got a Sabonis, because like you said, he is the best player of those ones that seemed to be on that kind of revolving list of potential players that could be moved. Although I mean, Siakam was also kind of involved.
Siakam.
But I don't know. I feel like Domas is he's a top center. It's like you got Jokic, you got Embiid. It's not crazy to put Sabonis third, is it?
I think it is. I think it's just correct at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, there's Bam. There's I don't know. Like who else is there really?
Yeah.
Like, who's an all-star center in the league?
Yes, it's got to be Sabonis.
It is. It is a bonus.
And, that changed everything. And it was just like, that was like that seismic shift. And it was the classic instance of a drastic change, and drastic change kind of makes a lot of people uncomfortable, especially when you're moving a guy like Tyrese Halliburton. But I mean, as this year came to a close, all you could do, as you're looking at the Kings, they were sitting like 5th or 6th place in the West when the ball dropped, I guess you could say. And it's just like you can't help but to think back to that February trade. That's when everything started ticking upwards. You could see it immediately. Because like we said, like around the new year, I think it was less than a month after Walton got fired. And it's just like no change. This team is just seems like it's sinking. It's continuing its descent. And the Sabonis trade, I mean, like the first game that they played, which was that second of basically a doubleheader against whatever you want to call it, against
Minnesota.
Against Minnesota. And it's just like Fox had just come back, I think, the game beforehand, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's just like
their ass kicked.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's just like you bring Sabonis in, and it was a different style of basketball. They're playing it on the fly, first of all, which was amazing. Like he just gotten traded. He'd just gotten to town that day. And they come in, and it's just a completely different freaking team. I mean, quite literally, half the team was different, basically, by the end of the trade deadline. But, everything went uphill from there, at least to where we stand now. And again, it's like, all right, Sabonis is the big reason for that. But it's like, oh, who got Sabonis? Monty McNair in the front office. It's like, ooh, and you go down the line, and it's like he's kind of behind everything, as we'll kind of lay out. But that Sabonis trade just changed everything. You could see it. Even the other trades he made. I mean, he got Trey Lyles, which is I definitely would not have imagined it when the trade happened, or even a week after the trade happened. Would not have imagined that Trey Lyles would be an important member of this team. And yet, once he got put in the starting lineup, and basically through most of this season, aside from his kind of like falling out of the rotation there for a second, he's been great. He's been just an absolute shot in the arm for this team. And then I don't even think you can discount the acquisition of Dante DiVincenzo, even though it was really just a rental, because they ended up going with Monk in the offseason. But I think DiVincenzo really kind of like instilled kind of some form of a defensive identity in this team. And he really, I think his influence on Davion Mitchell, which maybe we haven't seen the full effects of that yet, or like a full Davion Mitchell at his full potential yet. I would hope. I think DiVincenzo's effect on him, and even the team's kind of competitive attitude on that end of the floor, really kind of set the tone for what they were able to do. Obviously, Mike Brown comes in. He gets all the credit for any of the and him and Jordi Fernandez get all the credit for any defensive improvement this year. But I think that's still kind of underrated, that kind of acquisition. And, even if they didn't make the plan, it didn't really ever seem like they were going to make the plan. But the ultimate takeaway from the last, month or two of the season was this team is, as Dante DiVincenzo said, forming good habits. And that's all you could do. And they had a foundation that was clear, and they had a direction. And it only got better through the offseason. Mike Brown gets a lot of credit for what this team's done this season. McNair hired him. That was McNair's guy through the final process, I guess, more than anything. And, his offseason, he drafts Keegan Murray, who, I mean, it's really early, but, that guy is making valuable contributions and is a kind of a nice presence despite being a first-year player on a team that's winning, and he's making an impact. So, and I think his ceiling, what he'll be able to do in this league based on what we've seen, is incredible, and I think most people agree with that. And then obviously getting Monk and Herter and setting this team on a course where most of the guys are around a certain age group, like talking about picking that direction. He did it quite like he really kind of narrowed it down into something very specific. And you can see what this team is doing. You can see what the goal is. You can see what they imagine is on the horizon in the next 3 or 4 years. And I mean, when have you ever had that kind of like hope and like immediate results too? Because they have a winning record now. They're playing pretty good basketball. I mean, they kind of got some issues, at this point in the season, but who doesn't? I don't know. Maybe I skipped through kind of the last part there, but it's McNair. And also, I can't forget that there was the report in April from Jason Anderson that McNair, according to an unnamed minority owner, is fully in charge. He's head the snake there. No meddling from Vivek Ranadive, which, as some people have pointed out, he deserves some credit too for staying out of the way. And I guess I'm not going to be a jackass and withhold that from him. So credit to Vivek for just staying out of the way. But, this team it's incredible, I guess. Just if calendar year, looking from January to now, the progression has been the best that this franchise has seen in a decade and a half.
Yeah, and I think something that is so great about 2022 is that it's just really set everything up for an even better 2023. Because when 2024 hits, I can't predict the future, but I'm assuming we're going to be saying even better things than what we were saying for 2022. I mean, hopefully it starts off with a McNair contract extension. Hopefully we can say they made the playoffs. Hopefully they can say they picked up a couple other pieces, because now the Kings are making themselves, if they continue to play this way, they're putting themselves in a position where free agents would want to come here. And it started with Malik Monk, really. And now the Kings have a winning record, and they got a good tandem in Sabonis and Fox, and a good coach and a good front office. Like, then we're going to be like, okay, well, the Kings picked up these pieces in the offseason to really help them take the next step. And then hopefully at the end of 2023, they're near the top of the West, kind of like they are this year. They're fifth or sixth seed right now. So, and they ended the year in fourth place in the West after the Clippers lost to the Pacers. So, I mean, when was the last time the Kings ended a calendar year in fourth place? Probably a very long time ago. So it's just been it's been a great 2022. But like I said, everything's setting up for future success. And I think we can, like you said, it's like, when was there this much hope, like, going forward? And it's just, yeah, it's all the credit goes to McNair. He's been awesome. He's orchestrated all of this, and he's just put together such a good unit, such a good team, coaching staff, players, just everything. So it's been awesome. 2022 was probably the best calendar year since maybe the playoff days, really. It's hard to compare. I think so many things went right.
I think to translate what Tony's saying that 2022 is the best year for him since the year he first got a girlfriend.
Yeah.
So
it's just everything's been going up since then.